Good morning. This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul
and Jolene. And today we're talking about starting a campaign. Some of us are more awake than others.
Yeah, it's been a long night. It was raining all night, so it was I thought it was pretty cool. Jolene, not so much. Starting a campaign. Now I'm talking about like starting from scratch, from the very inception of thinking you want to start a campaign. As a GM, I'm talking about. Players, they're going to be involved, but mainly it's the GM that first has the impetus of starting a campaign. Unless he gets they get a round of people, round. They get players asking them, oh, please run this game for us, a certain game, whatever that is. Then it's not really the GM's burgeoning idea. It's the players pushing them that they want to play a different game. But usually, I think it's the GM who comes up with something they want to run, an idea they get to run a game. So the first thing is, where do you get the ideas from, right? I think most people, at least I do, this is how I guess I figure how I come up with ideas to run campaigns, is books. I read a lot. Now I don't read a lot of books, but I read a few books a year. And some of those ideas are really cool. Some of the settings are really neat. Some settings that I didn't think of. And I'm like, oh, that would be interesting. And I always think about how interesting of a role-playing setting that would be when I'm reading books, because I'm so heavily invested in role-playing games. And so books are things that can motivate you to think up of a campaign or a setting.
So you're talking about you coming up with the campaign setting yourself.
Right.
Like you read a John Grisham novel and decided that you were going to run a spy game.
Correct. Perfect.
I hope John Grisham writes spy novels because I'm a little tired this morning.
Thriller, John Grisham, yeah. No, he writes the lawyer ones.
Okay.
So
you wanted to play a lawyer game.
Tom Clancy would be like the Red Hunt for Red October dude. What's his name? Jack Ryan? So then another area, of course, of inspiration could be movies. We watch movies all the time. I watch a lot of movies. And so
you don't usually run campaigns with the movies you watch, though.
No, but they can be ideas like, that's the kind of game I want to run. Like, I haven't done it yet, but let's say something like, what's the one with Matt Damon, where he's like a super soldier? The Bourne Identity, yeah. The Bourne series. Something like that, like a super spy novel, a super spy movie. It could be James Bond 007, any of the movies, especially the latest ones with, what's his name? Not Roger Craig. What's his name? Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig, the English dude. I guess they're all English. No, what's his name? Remington Steele. He's not.
He was Irish.
Oh, he was. Oh, I thought he was American. So movies can usually light a spark again in your imagination, and if you'd like me going, oh, how would this run as a campaign, as a game at least? And it can be very useful, especially if there's a lot of movies of that type, or that series. Like the Bourne Identity, right? There's 3 or 4 movies in that one. Star Wars, stuff like that. And the next one is just out of your own imagination. You think up of a situation. It could be an amalgamation of movies, short stories, books, plays, or anything you've seen or read or heard, or just come up on your own. Or
you could be standing in a bookstore and see Storm King's Thunder and go, oh, that would be cool.
Well, yeah, that's down the line.
Oh, I didn't know you had a line.
There's a system, Jolene, the system.
Well, when you're coming up with the idea for a campaign, did you take into consideration what would make what your players would want to play, or do you come up with the idea and then present it to the players, and you have that one guy going, "Oh, we're gonna play that again"?
I think that's what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about just coming up with the first idea of a campaign. You're jumping the gun for me, but later on, I'm going to include players.
Oh, okay.
So along with the second thing I have is system. Like, what system would you run this theoretical campaign? It's just an idea. She's looking at my notes and laughing. And the system,
I am, because he has players second, but then he has a 3 next to it. So
I thought the system would come in next. And then the system is like straight rules for your setting. Is it rules already for that game. Let's say you saw Star Wars and you're like, I want to run a Star Wars game. Hey, there's a couple rule sets already for Star Wars. Or The Expanse. Well, there's a rule book for The Expanse. There's some rules.
Okay. Just to play the devil's advocate, what if all your players only want to play at a certain system?
You're skipping the line.
I wasn't.
Yeah, because
in a certain system.
Later. Oh,
you're talking about systems.
Well, I mean that's true.
Say that you guys only run Savage Worlds. Well, that would be easy because you can run anything in Savage Worlds.
That's
right?
true.
Or GURPS, you can run anything in GURPS.
Right. But let's say it's 5th edition D&D, and that's all they want to play is 5th edition D&D. And we're talking about the fantasy D&D game, right? Not some homebrew or not some... There's a bunch of third-party licenses out there. Third-party... Not licensed, third-party...
I don't know what you're trying to say. He's looking at me like I can supply the word to him.
It's on the tip of my tongue. Third-party creators that publish stuff for D&D that...
Well, that's okay because... I hear there's other games that are done in 5th edition that aren't D&D. You said there was somebody, that one that we looked at, not Vossen. There was another one that was an alternative to D&D that went with the 5th edition.
Oh, Symborium or Symbaroum?
Yes.
Right. That's what I'm talking about. There's different settings and rule sets that use 5th edition base mechanics and have their own setting and everything. But you're right. You do have to include the players at some point. But this, again, is still in the planning or in the idea stage. If you're thinking about a game, you're thinking about a setting, what system would you use, right? You're going to use something that already there's rules for? Or are you going to hack a system, like change it a little bit? Or are you going to use something of your own making, like total homebrew? So those are things that usually happen. Okay, so you jumped the gun a little bit. So I got to go to players right away now. And players are important because... if you have no players,
it's really hard to run a campaign without players.
So here's the sticky part, right? That does happen where players are very like, I don't want to play that game, or that's not going to be fun for me, or literally, there's a lot of people. If you look on the internet, there's a lot of people who say that there's a lot of players out there, and they usually call them new players, which I don't even know if that's true. But there's a lot of players out there that only want to play D&D, right? And that's all they want to play, almost to the point like that's all the only game that exists to them.
That's only because it's new to them, right?
Right.
It's the new generation that saw actual plays and said, this is what role-playing is.
Right. But there's also those old people who still play AD&D.
What do you call them? The grognards?
Grognards. It's a French word for old soldier, I believe, Napoleon times.
Well, sometimes people, and it's not only D&D, because I know people that only play Savage World.
Right.
They'll play anything in Savage Worlds, but that's the system they know and that's the system they like.
Right.
And a lot of people, that is the thing. It's not like you and your GM friends who want to try out all the new different systems and see how it works.
Correct.
Some people just want to play one thing.
Right. So you're right. You bring in the players at this point after you thought of an idea, maybe even attach the system that you would probably want to try it in. And you ask the players, do you want to play this game? Usually it's your circle of friends, right? Or the circle of players that you have. But sometimes they may not be interested in it. And then you're like, oh.
How am I going to get more different players?
Well, I mean, you could go out. The thing is, you got to go outside your comfort zone, right? Outside your inner circle of friends or your inner circle of gamer friends who you play with all the time. And I kind of did this with what became, or Shannon calls the Stanford group. We were playing online, and I really wanted to play in person, right? That was the deal. Well, Felipe was still in Salinas, so Micah was gone. But it doesn't matter. But I wanted to try new blood, right? And so I thought of Shannon, who I played with only at conventions. And he played at my home, but mainly just one-shots and stuff. And then Bay, who I didn't know was an RPG player. I thought he only played board games. And then I saw him running Star Wars at a convention. I go, oh, he runs Star Wars. Yeah. He goes, oh, wow. I go, you play role-playing games? He goes, yeah. I go, wow. So I invited him, and I go, do you have any ideas of who you should, if you want to start a group? And then he mentioned that Kawi was interested in playing role-playing games. And then Shannon suggested Morgan. And I forget who else we were.
Jason and Honda.
Oh, Jason and Honda. I don't know, and Felipe was in it. For the most part, it was a different group, with a little bit of old included, of people that had not played before. It was fantastic, right? Because what does happen if you play with the same people all the time, I think, like I did when I was young, I played with Mike, Felipe, Esteban, and Sip. That was like, and sure, Mike's brothers sometimes played, but for the most part, those are the group. That's the group that we played with, and Felipe, right? And so we were really used to each other's style of gaming, and so we didn't really change. There wasn't a new people coming in, giving us different ideas of how to role play. So we role played the way we were doing it, and we didn't change much. And I can say that I probably role played the same way up until I was probably 40. I was kind of a hack and slasher. I would present combat as the action of the game that I was running all the time. That was just it. Every once in a while, I would get a little bit.
I don't know if that's true. I know that before you started playing with other people's, you got other games, like after you went to conventions and stuff. Well, after conventions changed and had more things than just what you were doing to start with, you started at getting different games to play and play them with your group.
Yeah, I tried because like my group was they didn't want to learn a new system, right? And I can understand that because some systems can be tough, especially the old games. I remember, I don't want to run a new game. I'm like, okay, I don't want to play a new game. I don't want to learn. They would be afraid. We got to learn a new system, right? And then another part was that a lot of times I would drop it, right? Okay, we're not going to play anymore, or it would just die, the game. And so I can understand the trepidation of somebody who knows my penchant.
I want to try this new thing. Okay, I'm done.
Yes, exactly. And so. And they're like, everybody just sits back, Saul's got a new game.
Saul made me learn this, and now he doesn't want to play it.
Right. Or the new fad is gone. So I understand that. But I also still want to try new games and see how they work, because I'm fascinated about how certain games or how certain systems work. For example, I love the Tales from the Loop game, right? I really like it because it's so simple, and to me, it's fun. And it doesn't really center around combat, which I thought was an interesting thing. Okay, so maybe it wasn't 40, but maybe when I was 35. So about the last 20 years, I've really started changing the way I play, mainly because I started I've always been going to conventions, but conventions really, that's when I really started paying attention to how people did things. And I'm like, it's not all about combat. It's not all about... there's role playing as in getting really into their character, and I know Felipe has been saying that for years and years and years, and he's always trying. He
was the first one to branch out and play with other people besides your group.
Yeah, probably.
And that really bothered you because he didn't take you with him.
No, I wasn't bothered.
I believe so.
I wasn't bothered one iota.
So Saul started this whole monologue because of. If your players don't want to play in the system you want to try, then you have to figure out. You have to, like he says, find new players to play it. Maybe one or two of them want to play and somebody else doesn't, so you just have to. I don't know. I wouldn't troll the internet looking for people, but find other people.
You got to recruit, a little bit. You got to go out and find players. I think, for example, I would like to play, maybe even run Twilight 2000. I don't think anybody I know wants to play that game.
It's not going to be me because that involves keeping track of your stuff and how many bullets you have, and I'm not into that.
Right.
I want feng shui bullets. They're all everywhere. I pull them out of thin air.
So I'm not sure. Like Augustine and the Mays would like to play that game.
I know Kathy wouldn't.
Right.
Although she might get into it. I don't know.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like that's the kind of game. And as far as the Stanford group, I'm not sure any of them would want to play that game.
That's a little too straightforward violence.
Too close to home? Well, it's not all about violence, but I understand. So I think sometimes there's nobody in your circle of friends or your group of players that want to try out a certain game, mainly because it absolutely has no interest in that for them. There's no interest. They have no interest in that game or that setting for them, and you really want to try it out. So you have to find players for it. There's all kinds of places you can find players. There's conventions. There's hobby shops. You can, I hate to say it, not troll the internet, but you can actually go into the internet and find places that where you can find players. For example, Roll20 has looking for a group. Almost any kind of online game system or VTT or whatever has you go Reddit. They have looking for players kind of stuff. And I think that's if you don't have anybody else that you can go to the internet. I remember I had plenty of players, but I just wanted to invite other people that I didn't know, and I put there's a website called Pen and Paper, and it recently has come back. I think it was gone for a while, but it's recently come back, and they're trying to get back into running again. And Pen and Paper is a forum or a website where you post games that you want to play or run and find players for it. Mainly now it's you could use for online and meet face to face. But back then, online playing wasn't that popular. But I found this lady, and she was really nice, and she was a Warhammer player. She was a miniature player. But she was an amazing role player, and she was really good. I mean, she was a cleric of something or other, and she would always say, people would say, "Oh, can you heal me?" And she goes, "How do you pray to Mithra?" I don't know what the goddess it was, but she was really good, and I was like, man, she really brings it to the table, and I thought it was really neat. I think you can be really successful. I think you got to be, real careful. Like it's like hiring somebody for a job, kind of. Maybe not that stringent, but you got to make sure that it's a good fit for your group. But that's anything, anytime. So find your players, cool. Then you go. What do you do from there, right? Where do you go from there? Start the campaign work, right? As soon as you got your players, you got your system down, you got your ideas. Then you start writing down whatever you got to write down.
Well, so then you have to figure out, people have to make characters and all that kind of stuff, right?
Right. But this is your planning stages. This is when you're by yourself, you're the GM, and you got to come up with adventures or what you're gonna do, like what the setting is. You're gonna write down your basic notes at this point. At the same time, or a little bit after that, you ask your players, what stories do they want to experience, right?
So are you talking about a session 0 or are you talking before a session 0?
Before a session 0, because you're going to want to see what kind of stories they want to tell or experience, right? And so you ask the players, well, do you guys want to have sure, we're playing in the Bourne Identity world, right? But do you want to be Bourne, or do you want to be one of the people in the background? I mean, what kind of game, where do you want your adventures to take place, and what areas? You know what I mean? So I think player input as to what kind of game they want to play. Sure, you can say, I want to play in Star Wars. Well, that's a huge world, right? Do you want to play smugglers? Do you want to play Imperial pilots? Do you want to play stormtroopers? Do you want to play the rebels?
I don't know anybody that wants to play a stormtrooper.
You never know. There might be some out there that want to do it. It's possible. That's what I'm talking about. Because if you're coming up, they're going to want to be rebels. But then all of a sudden, we're all going to join the Imperial flight school. Okay. So,
wouldn't it be? This is just me. Wouldn't it be easier to make the characters and then ask them what their character wants to do or experience, or what is the?
Well, yeah. I think so. I mean, either way, along those lines.
Because in the olden days, when you used to use email to do the characters, remember?
Yeah. I would still do that.
Everybody would make the character, and then you would go, okay, where do you see your character doing? What kind of? Give me an idea, just a little bit of a backstory, so I can. And then you would integrate it to see how people knew each other and all that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, you could do that, but I think you could do that, yeah. And I've done that, and I think it was very successful, and I'm very happy about how it turned out. But that is also a lot of work for the GM, who's always has a lot of work to do anyway. So to minimize that work,
you can make the characters, the people, the players do that amongst each other too.
Yeah.
But you need to know, so you know how they.
Right, they would keep you in the loop.
So once you know what your players want to experience, then you can tailor some of the encounters and stuff to that, right?
Right, and that's putting concepts down in your notes, right? This is the kind of adventures that A, B, and C want, and D and F want this kind of game. So you kind of have to give everybody what they want, a little bit of give them the stories that they want to tell, or the adventures that they want to have, or the kinds of things that they want to do in the game. So everybody has something to do at one point or another, or their specialties, or whatever their characters are, or whatever their characters' strengths are. That's why you want to talk to your players and be able to figure that out. You don't want to guess and then guess wrong as to what kind of game they want to be in. Or
I agree.
A lot of that is just asking players and have good communication with your players. And sometimes I don't do this, right? I started I don't remember Storm King's Thunder. I think you guys already had your characters.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. I think it was the campaign before that it was when I did all that emails and stuff like that. So I think when that happened, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to pair the people who I think are going to be closest to each other for whatever reason. And a lot of them were already saying, oh, I know this person. Like Steve and Alan knew each other, right? Because they had made their characters together. I was pairing players together so they would know each other, and I forget who I paired you with. But anyway, so I was doing that, and of course when they came to me, oh, I know this character because we're together. Okay, fine, and I gave them a little bit more information, right? I go, okay, since you've been in the city, this is what you've been doing, and blah 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 blah. In the city of Shazeo is what I think where the campaign started. I think that's all part of communication, and that's all part of having a campaign that's going to go well. At the very end of all this stuff that we've been thinking and talking about, you have the session 0, right? You have players come in, sit down at a table or virtual table if you have to, and make characters. I know a lot of people don't really believe in this session 0 thing. I can make characters on my own. I think what happens...
Well, you can always have them make the characters before session 0, and then when you get to session 0... you can put them together, like make the connections and stuff like that.
Yeah, but I think there's something happens when you're making characters together. Like you're all together and you're making characters, and you're like, oh, what are you going to make? And then there's a lot of back and forth in that stage.
I don't know. We had some issues when we were all making when Alan and Augustine were trying to help us with the Shadowrun characters, because they were too involved in making their own characters to answer the questions of us that needed questions answered.
That's that is because they really know how to make characters and you guys don't know the rules as well. So if everybody was equal,
which brings up a good point, not everybody is going to be at the same level of knowing how to make characters, especially if it's a new system, or because someone might have experienced that system before and someone wouldn't. Yeah,
you're right. But for example, we didn't make characters together for Vossen.
No. Well, I made my own character and you made your own character.
Right.
We made characters together,
right.
But not with the other people.
Right. But even then, when we were together, we were like, oh, what kind of character are you making? And then based on what you were making, I didn't make the same character, right? That's what I think is interesting about being at the table or around, or at least everybody discussing together what kind of character they're going to make. Because... not that I'm really into balanced parties. I really could care less. You could all play bards. You could all play vagabonds or whatever in any game, in any system. It doesn't matter to me. But it does matter to certain GMs and does matter to certain players. They don't want to double up on somebody else's skills or skill sets or type of character that they're playing.
I have a certain set of skills.
Okay. Sorry. But I think a lot of people are really concerned about that, and a few GMs are concerned about it.
I know, we've talked about it, and I've been at, especially organized play.
Well, definitely.
Because I've been sitting at a table at organized play before with my son and watched Saul just blow people's minds because he wouldn't tell them what his character was. And they needed to know. It was like a compulsive need to know because the party needed to be balanced. And that was the only time I ever went, whoa, this is very different than what we usually do. Because usually you can make whatever kind of character you want. It doesn't matter if you have 2 paladins or whatever, right?
Right.
But
yeah.
But that was the time when I realized that, okay, people, that was the first time and probably only time I've been at a table where a balanced party was a serious issue for these people.
Usually it's not so strict in most people's games, but I think that's the most extreme version of that idea, and that comes from organized play because the whole idea is you want as much wide variety of skill to get through the adventure. And the adventures are geared to have a wide variety of types of
So if you don't have a certain kind of character, it's going to be harder to get through.
Theoretically. But as
you know,
as I found out, that's absolutely not true because we bowled through different adventures and it didn't matter. I mean, there was never a time where, man, we need this skill and there's nobody with that skill in our group.
Because it's a role-playing game. You're supposed to come up with other options, right?
Right. And I think that's
the best part about role-playing is all the different ideas that people come up with to get through a certain lock or whatever the situation is.
What I like about session 0 is when people are making characters together, they at the same time, not only are making characters together, right? And they're like, okay, I'm not going to make the same character as you, or I could be your brother or sister or something. The players, when they're all in the group together, they're making connections. Like the connections that were made when I ran my campaign, when I started that Return to the King or To the King campaign set in Suzale, people who made connections were people who already knew each other. Like, for example,
we all knew each other.
I mean, yeah, but they made the characters together.
Yeah.
Right? So Steve and Alan, right? They obviously made the characters at the same time and were talking to each other, and they formed a link before they even came to the table, or even told, before I even knew what kind of characters they were. They already having this link. But I think you have a more organic link around the table when everybody's around the table, and like maybe Steve wouldn't have linked his character to Alan. He might have linked his to Chris or to you.
Oh, I understand what you're saying, but Steve would have linked his character to Alan anyway.
I understand that, but I think there's a better chance when everybody's together going, oh, you're going to make this kind of character? I think we would fit together, not just like, oh, because I want to help my son out and I want to be together with him. And it has nothing to do with...
Well, the kids were also a lot younger then, so that had a lot to do with it.
I don't know, how long ago was that then?
They were like 12, 13.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Maybe even younger.
No, because any younger, they would be playing Pathfinder.
Okay.
We were playing D&D, I think.
Okay.
5th edition.
I don't know. Which one is Storm's King's Thunder?
5th edition.
Okay, there you go.
Wow. No, I think they were like 14. Well, okay, how old are they? They're 19.
Augustine and Alan, yeah.
So 6 years ago? Yeah. It was definitely, definitely before the pandemic. But, yeah.
I understand. Like, the last campaign, or when Augustine said he was going to run a campaign.
Oh, yes.
But when we made our characters, you and I made characters that were both gnomes, and we were not related or anything, but we were traveling.
We thought about it. I thought about it, but you said no.
You kept saying you want to be my brother. I'm like, no. I don't want to be that close to you.
That was funny. That's the harshest no I've ever heard. Yeah, and I think that was neat. But I would have been neater if we would have been making all the characters together and then like see the nuances of what's going on in the character development, and then see like me, I wanted to attach myself to you because you were making the character right next to me and you just happened to be a gnome. But if Steve or Kathy was making a character, I don't even remember what kind of character she was making, I would say, oh, I really like that idea of that character. How about, and then make that connection with characters with people, players whose characters you're not making one right next to. That's what I'm thinking about. So I think I really like the idea of making a session 0. I mean, having a session 0 where players make their characters, and what's even more important is where questions are asked and answered. Oh, what about this to the GM, and the GM gives off information. Or even before that, say, okay, we're playing a fantasy D&D type game, no evil, no assassin type characters. About being none. I don't want that. No evil characters, no assassins, right? Okay, that's like a table rule that should have been done before session 0, but if it comes up, then you can squash their...
Because Carl already handed you the evil assassin character, and you forgot to tell him that. You didn't want that.
I feel bad about it, but I tear it up in pieces and then...
You wouldn't tear it up.
Then I light it on fire.
You wouldn't tear it up. You would just say, I'm sorry, Carl, that you can't have that character.
You're done, Carl.
That'll be for a different campaign. Save it for later.
That's not my game. Yeah, I would have those table rules ahead of time. But other things that might come up that you haven't thought about, like multi-classing or having certain type of stuff, like, oh, I want this item. I'm like, okay, no, or yes, or whatever, right? Not right now, but let's have you making it, or having you make
You
put
can
on
work
layaway.
towards that.
Put on layaway, right? So you can have it later. Not at first level, or not as a beginning character. Can I get a gunship, a marine gunship? No, not off the top. Not from the very beginning. No, it was one of the first in the Expanse. It was the first thing they got, but that was because of the story. But stuff like that can happen where people ask questions, and I think that Session Zero is a perfect time to get all that stuff out of the way, including making the characters together, including making connections to each other. And I think that would make a more easier way to start a campaign than having those questions creep up during play, because nobody wants that, right? Nobody wants, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to use my assassin sneak attack to. You're like, what? Why? Oh, hold on, you can't be an assassin. Doesn't an assassin have to be evil? Oh yeah. I'm chaotic evil. I don't allow chaotic evil. I don't allow evil characters to make it. What? Oh my God. That would be terrible. And it'd be a lot of your fault as a GM because you didn't establish those things right ahead of time. And then look at their characters. Look at their characters, people, GMs. Because sometimes they might surprise you when they sneak on that paper.
This has happened to Saul before.
Too many times.
Because he just assumes that everyone makes a character the same way he does.
Yes, and that's another thing, is that you don't know how people make characters. Like the whole idea of having a dump stat, right? I never even conceived that idea.
I can see playing Traveler and making your characters together, because then you can all commiserate with each other as you die or turn out to be a sucky character.
Well, actually,
and you might need people to help you interpret the rules, because...
The new Travelers books are not that bad. They're really good, actually. They're really good. Like Mongoose Traveler is a really good book.
You don't die when you make your character?
No.
You don't have a chance to die?
No.
Oh, okay. Then you get stuck with a sucky character, maybe.
I think they still do that random skill thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the idea behind that, I know it's kind of going off subject. Should we talk about that some other? Real quick, the whole idea is you get stuck with a character that you have to play, and that's the fun part, right? That's so simple. Right. That's like original D&D. Original D&D, you roll 3 dice in order, strength, wisdom, and that's what you're stuck with, no matter what.
Well, it's kind of like when, and if you're running a campaign, you wouldn't be making all the characters, but it's like when we run or play in one-shots where Shannon already has the characters made, or they've already done these things, right? So they give you a pool of characters to choose from.
Right.
And then, which I think is fun, especially for one-shots, because then you can play all kinds of different people. Although Bay got kind of upset with me when I picked a thief for the second time for Feng Shui.
Oh, okay.
Not upset, but he was like, you played a thief the last time. I'm like, well, it's the easiest character that I know because I've played it before.
Yeah. We played Feng Shui twice with him?
No, I don't think we actually got to play the Feng Shui because I think that's when I got sick.
That's right. Oh, yeah. That's what we're coming up with. Yeah, that's right.
The dreaded COVID.
Yes. Yeah, so I think the whole idea behind all these rules or all these ideas is to avoid surprises when your campaign starts, or surprises when you don't have any players. Oh, we don't want to play that game. And you invested all this time. Surprises where, you made a character with a dump stat. I don't allow that, or stuff like that, right? That's why good communication is good. You should always communicate with your players, communicate back and forth as much as possible, and therefore you eliminate any problems with starting a campaign.
So you've figured out what campaign, what system you want to run, what game you want to run, or what genre or whatever, your idea.
First is the idea,
and then
there's the system,
and then you got the players.
Then you get the players.
You get the characters made.
And talk to your players.
And then what happens?
And then you start the campaign. There you go.
So what if they can't all meet? Do you have to also come up with when you're meeting?
Well, that goes outside the realm of creating a campaign.
Ah, okay.
Right. We're talking as far as scheduling. I put that under herding the cats. All right, the players, and sometimes sometimes that's what you really have to consider is how often you're going to meet, how often you're going to be able to meet.
Well, it might be easier like if it's your normal group and you've been playing on Tuesday nights for 40 years, then everybody knows that, right?
Right.
And everybody's into that
Right.
schedule. But if it's that you meet once a month on a Saturday when everybody can, then it might be a little more difficult.
Yes, that's different. Yes.
That's harder to run a campaign that way. If you have set days that you meet, it's easier, I think. I'm just saying.
Yeah, of course. But like for us, when we set it on Saturday, the problem with Saturdays is people like to do stuff on the weekends other than play games, right?
Well, yeah. Or
So-
you have to do
Or you have to
things
do
come
oh,
up
I
that
gotta
you
go
have
to a wedding. I
a
gotta go
birthday party.
party, or whatever. I have to go to a luncheon with my parents.
Yeah.
Stuff like that happens. And so, but for me, weekends are definitely the only time I can play because I work, right? And if I had a normal job, normal hours, I could possibly play at night. Like, we could play Tuesday nights from 8 to 11, right? Or 6 to 11 or 7 to whatever. And it would be possible to do that. Problem I have is all these people are retired, these bastards. And so they can play anytime they want. They're often very busy, even though they're retired, right? They have lives outside of RPGs.
So
that's it. I mean, you once you have everything ironed out, you got your idea. You get attached a setting or a rule set. You got your players. They have their characters. You ironed out any potential problems as far as table rules and stuff like that. I'm not going to worry about scheduling. That's a whole different ball of wax. That's totally on you guys. Whoever's playing, you start the campaign, and you just enjoy the game for what it's worth. I mean, you don't know how long game's going to be. You don't know if they're going to finish the campaign. I was pretty sure, for example, sometimes you're going to finish a campaign, right? For like when we were playing D&D every Saturday or every other Saturday, I knew we were going to finish both of the campaigns, To the King and then for Storm King's Thunder. I knew you guys were going to finish it. I just felt that. But other times you're like, I don't know if they're going to really enjoy this game or they're going to like find a new another game that they like more or want to try. So that's always something that happens with people's games or your game or your campaign. And don't be too upset if it doesn't go to the end or what you consider a good ending. Sometimes games don't go all the way to the end, or campaigns, I should say, don't go to the end. And you shouldn't be too upset about it. You're like, a little bit upset about it. But don't let it get you down. I mean, there's other games and more fun awaits in different worlds.
there you go.
There it is.
This is Gaming Perspectives with
Saul,
and Jolene.
and you have a good day.